Hello and welcome to Loud Creations. Today I am here to talk about my first attempt at making a root beer mead. I'm a huge fan of root beer, and recently I bottled my spiced licorice mead, which if you haven't seen that video, you can check out right here. And when I tasted it, it had kind of a taste of like root beer a little bit. And then I thought about it. I was like, oh yeah, I think that is an ingredient in root beer. And I looked up a recipe, and here we are. So I basically just followed the recipe for making root beer. And that licorice root, I also made myself a cup of tea, because if you can't tell, I'm a little under the weather right now. Back to what we were talking about here. So I'm just going to go into what the ingredients were to make the root beer. And I have that right here in my little book. So I used about 7 grams of birch bark, 7 grams of sassafras root, 7 grams of sarsaparilla root, and about 4 grams of licorice root. Now, when I went to make this, I realized I didn't have any licorice root left, so I was lucky enough to find some tea at the store down the hill. So I used tea for the licorice root and just kind of used my scale to try to get close to 4 grams. I also used 1 vanilla bean and a 1-inch piece of ginger. This recipe also includes 2 cups of molasses, and then of course I added honey because this is a mead video and I'm making mead. And there are some health risks related to sassafras that you should definitely, before using it, read up on, look into. I feel like there's not that much in here for the volume of liquid, but basically when they gave high doses of saffrol, which is a compound within sassafras, to rats, they got cancer. So good to do your research and know what risks you're taking with these various things. So they used to actually make root beer with sassafras, and then the FDA put a stop to it. I want to say in like the 60s or something. All right, so I think I went through all the ingredients. If I missed anything, there'll be a little thing that pops up that says, oh, and this too. But I'm pretty sure that's it. So how did I make this? I went ahead and I got myself a stock pot, and I put in all of the ingredients, the birch bark, sassafras, sarsaparilla, and licorice root, tea bags. And then I went ahead and I split my vanilla bean and I tossed that in there too. And then I took my 1-inch little nub of ginger, sliced that up and tossed that in there as well. And then I added about half a gallon of water to that. And to make this, you just put it on the stove, get it up to almost a full boil. You want it so it's starting to bubble, but not necessarily a rolling boil. And as soon as it gets to that point, I just put a lid on it and set it aside for 2 hours. So all of the ingredients had a lot of time to infuse into the water. So, and this is very fragrant. It definitely smells like root beer. And molasses, but we'll get into that later. So while that was happening, while it was sitting for 2 hours, I went ahead and I sanitized everything I was going to need, like this 2-gallon bucket, my spoons, and whatever else I was going to be using, and came back to it, and I went ahead and I filtered it out through, I used a mesh bag to pour the liquid through into the bucket, and it was a nice dark brown liquid. Then I went ahead and I added 2 cups of molasses. Approximately 2 cups, because I didn't stand there forever and let every little drop fall out of it. So about 2 cups. And then I already had an open container of honey. I want to say I put in probably about maybe 2¼ cups, 2¼ pounds of honey. Yeah, and I stirred that up really well. Got it all mixed in, and then I went ahead and took a little bit out and set it aside and added a half a teaspoon of Go Firm. Yes, Go Firm. I always want to say Firmado. It's Go Firm, my yeast nutrient. And I let that sit for a few minutes. And then this was all pretty cooled off because it sat for 2 hours. But I went ahead and added my second half of the water. So another half gallon of water. This filtered water. Stirred that up really well. Added my yeast to the Go Firm. Let that sit. And then I added it in. Stirred it up. And took a gravity reading. And the gravity for this was 1.104. And the yeast I used is EC1118. Because my goal here is to just let this get as high ABV as it can, and then I'm going to back sweeten it. So when I rack it the first time, I might add a little honey, a little extra too, in case it has more room to ferment. Actually, let's see what approximate ABV that would be. Yeah, so we're at under 14%. So if I had more honey, I would have added a little bit more, but that's fine. I'll add more later. And because EC1118 goes to approximately 18%. So this is going to be like my root beer schnapps, I guess is what I'm going for. Okay, where am I going? So for this, I'm just going to let it sit probably for a couple weeks in this bucket, and then I'm going to transfer it into a carboy. I'm thinking this is about a gallon, but it might be closer to 1.5 gallons with the addition of the honey and the molasses, and there aren't really any solids in here. So we'll see how much I get out of this. But when I use the bucket, I like to do a little extra just to be sure I get at least 1 gallon. You can see it's already bubbling a little bit. So that's exciting. In other videos, I've gone over the medicinal qualities of many of the ingredients in here. But today I will go over the ones that I have not touched on. So birch bark is one. I have never used birch bark before. And I looked up on it, and it is known as one of the spring cures. It's been used for a very long time. And it's often been used for sprains, sore muscles, to help clear sinuses, helps with sore joints and that kind of stuff. And all of these, I'm finding, have similar qualities. Sassafras root it's good for bronchitis. Well, I could definitely use that right now. Sassafras root, so good for bronchitis, swollen throat and nose. Yeah. High blood pressure, it can help with that. It's anti-cancer. It's a blood purifier. It's been used to treat syphilis. And it's good for sore joints and sprains. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning, it contains a compound called safrole, which is a no-no according to the FDA. And sassafras has been used for thousands of years in different areas by indigenous people. And so it's kind of one of those things you can take your own risks, do your research, and figure out what you're comfortable with before using this. You can make root beer without sassafras. And then the last one is sarsaparilla. And again, this has been used for centuries across the world by indigenous peoples. In the 1800s, it was also used to make a sweet carbonated beverage known as sarsaparilla. It is anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, helps with arthritis, indigestion, psoriasis, and eczema. And it is also a blood purifier. So all three of these ingredients have very similar compounds. What am I going to do going forward with this? I am going to, like I said, probably let this stay here for a couple weeks, and then I'll move it into a glass jug or carboy and add a little bit more honey. I'm going to back sweeten it, and yeah, and then I'm just going to let it ferment all the way out, if it will. I have pretty good luck with EC1118. It seems like it just cuts through everything and does its job. So, yeah, I might add a little more vanilla to make it have more of a like root beer float kind of flavor to it. But we will see. I'm just happy to see that it's already bubbling away. Next time you see me with this mead will probably be in several months because I keep thinking I'm going to do a tasting video, or not a tasting video. I don't know if I've said this in my other videos, but I always intend to do like a second part 2 video, and it's just with the rest of my life. I have a very busy schedule, so it's hard to fit that in. And I want to make sure that I'm caring for my mead and doing all the steps when it's ideal to do them. So sometimes the camera doesn't make it out. But what am I saying? Well, I think that's about it for now. I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea, maybe the licorice tea that I bought. And I'm going to set this in just under my desk here, and I'm going to step feed it with Fermaid O, 24, 48, 36 hour mark, and then on the 7th day, approximately. Sometimes I forget that 7th day though, because life happens. Anyway, I hope this video was useful, and I will see you next time. Thank you.